So if anyone's coming over from socials
Yeah.
or YouTube, TikTok or whatever, before we get into it, we realise we're not big. You might be thinking, who the hell are these guys trying to start a podcast? But I've been listening to podcasts for years, something that I've been wanting to do. So thought teaming up, get the brand out there a little bit more, try and help you guys. That's essentially our job, is to help as many people as we can. So this is a very easy way to do that in like a not so professional manner, like a more sort of relaxed manner. Try to get a message across. That's kind of why we're starting. We're not starting because we think we're anything too big. But yeah, why do we start off with some intros? You want to introduce yourself?
Right. Well, I'm Leon, second half of Lift Initiative. I'm 23 years old as of recently, and I've been coaching for a few years now, but recently teamed up with Keaton to start our own little venture together that we've been thinking about for a while. But yeah, keen to actually provide some value for once with what we do. What about you?
Similar. So 23 years old, being a coach, I'd say pretty seriously now for like 2 years. Before that, it wasn't really getting 100% of the attention. But like you said, recently partnering up with you, growing something a bit bigger now, and looking forward to it, to say the least. And yeah, that is, I don't want to bore you guys too much with this is where I went to uni and this is what I've done and all that. I'll just stick to age, been coaching for about 2 years. Lift Initiative is now the brand. And yeah, we're coaching. So from there, we'll look at a little bit of a structure. So we're obviously not going to be too great at this. So we have got a bit of a structure. We're not going to just rhyme stuff off. We are going to be going through some questions. I've got some questions for you. You've got some questions for me. Then we'll be running through some of the mistakes that we've made. So hopefully we can then help you guys. And then we are going to be looking at some pet peeves and probably ramble on and talk a bit of nonsense in between. But main thing is hopefully we can try and get some value across to you guys and you can actually take something away from the podcast. So you want to ask me some questions?
Yeah, I'll ask you a question. So may as well start off with like something we can actually talk a wee bit about. So one thing I wanted to know your opinion on was the way that a lot of people subscribe to so many different training methods, and once they're in that camp and they've got that confirmation bias that this is the only way you can achieve something. So like, for instance, training to failure versus like reps and reserve, but at the end of the day they both are going to make you grow. What do you think about all that?
So my stance on someone maybe being closed-minded and not being open to like different approaches, like you said, everything's going to work. It doesn't really matter too much how you get there. It's more so just focusing on actually getting there. So picking on something that's going to align with more so your lifestyle and your habits and stuff, and ultimately what you enjoy. So me and you, let's be honest, we love training to failure. Like we wouldn't really go in and have a reps and reserve. I'm sure if I said to you, do you want to go and train 3 reps in reserve today, you'd look at me like, what are you talking about? So, but someone else might really enjoy reps and reserve. Someone might not enjoy going to failure, and both of them are going to work. So I wouldn't be so close-minded, and I wouldn't marry yourself to one thing until you maybe know exactly what it is that you enjoy. So I know that me and you would never go back to a reps and reserve method because we love pushing each other to failure, and more often than not, past failure as well. So it just wouldn't make sense for us to go in with a reps and reserve method. But the main thing is what you enjoy. Would you agree with that?
I'd agree. But I think, like, obviously that is the response that everyone wants to say, is that everything works. But, you know, I want to say training to failure is the only thing you can do. Because for me, obviously, I know I can look at all the data, I can look at what everyone else is doing, and I can see everyone's making progress doing what they're doing. But for me, it just feels like training to failure is the only way. Because when you train to failure, I feel like there's something else to be gained. Because not only are you're obviously progressing the same way you would be with reps and reserve, but you're also getting to progress mentally. You're pushing yourself past boundaries that you wouldn't have done. And of course, it's the training method I do, so it must be the only way you can do it. But obviously, do whatever method you want to do, but still feel like it's the only one.
Do whatever you want to do, just make sure you're doing it effectively. So if you want to do reps and reserve, you need to make sure that you're actually doing it effectively and you're training hard enough and you're not leaving too much in the tank. If you want to do failure, you need to make sure you're actually going to failure. I think a lot of people training to failure are actually probably training in a reps and reserve. I don't think they're actually taking it to that 10 out of 10 level of intensity. So someone saying, oh yeah, I actually trained to failure, they might as well, they might actually be trained to like an 8 out of 10, but they've never truly pushed themselves to like a real 10 out of 10 level of intensity. So people might actually be unaware of that too. And I would agree with you in terms of everyone needs to get a foundation of what failure is. Because if you don't know what failure is, if you don't know what 10 out of 10 feels like, how on earth are you going to know what 7 out of 10 feels like, or an 8 out of 10 feels like? If anything, I would say training with a reps in reserve method is harder to gauge, especially if you're a beginner. And because you need to understand what 10 out of 10 feels like first in order to know whereabouts you're actually falling within that scale of, let's just say 1 to 10, like how many reps in reserve are you actually leaving. You might think you're leaving 2, realistically you're leaving 4.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're not meeting that threshold of training hard enough to elicit some growth. So
especially for like a beginner. Like a beginner, you could say train to failure, this is the program I've made for you. You're going to train to failure all sets. And you know, when you watch the form feedback videos that they send back, everything here is, you know, okay, maybe you could have pushed a wee bit harder here. Maybe you left a few reps in the tank. That last rep looked a little quick. You know, that concentric tempo wasn't slowing down. You know, so yeah, I can see that. But probably with like training to failure in general, you know, I think a lot of people love to just subscribe themselves to one thing, especially like if you look at what most people are getting into now, like high rocks and stuff. If you ask someone who does like CrossFit and stuff, they're going to say, this is the only way to train.
Yeah.
You know, this is what I love to do, which is obviously different to what we do. But if you could think back to when you first started training, and you probably were in the same boat when you thought, I'm training really, really hard. I'm nailing these sessions. No one's training harder than me. Do you think you could really think back to a time when you first like were exposed to, oh, fuck, this guy here is training way harder than me and I need to step it up?
Probably. Honestly, looking back, it was like, you know, people might not know the name, but like Josh Bridgman, Joe Brightman, TM Cycles, and looking more at that sort of top set, back off set approach. Because when I first started getting into the gym, it was just, oh, I'm just going to do 4 sets on this and I'm just going to train until I've got a really
5
good
sets
pump and until I feel great, and then move on to the next exercise and then do like 15 exercises. But then going more over to a top set, back off set approach, because I idolized those guys. So I wanted to do what they were doing because they obviously looked great and I enjoyed their personality and things like that too. Cutting your workload straight down to 2 sets and then not feeling like you've got very much from those 2 sets is like a clear indication of like, okay, you're actually probably not training hard enough, because these guys are doing 2 sets and they're growing like crazy, and I'm doing 2 sets and I'm thinking I've just done a warm up here. So all of a sudden you need to make those 2 sets count a lot more, because you've got a lot less opportunity to get the same response out of that workload than you would with like 4 or 5 sets. You do 4 or 5 sets, there's probably going to be a couple of sets in there that were like relatively decent, or the amount of volume added up across those 4 or 5 sets is going to be adequate. If you've got 2 sets and they're both, let's say, not up to par, then the opportunity for growth there is way, way less straight off the bat.
Yeah.
So I think that's a clear indication of kind of when my training style changed. So
you're influenced heavily by like what you've seen about, as opposed to someone directly like training with you?
Yeah, because
so above the cream of the crop, were you?
A lot of the time I used to train myself. So I would look at guys on social media and things, and I would go into the gym and train myself. I've had obviously training partners and stuff like that before, but not to the point where, you know, someone was really, really pushing me. We were kind of married to the same thing.
Yeah.
I know that's maybe a little bit different to you though. If someone,
yeah. Well, I was exposed to someone who'd been training a lot longer. Shout out to Rory, but who I'm now coached by. But when we first started training, I think I maybe had like a bit of a different approach to training than most people start out with. I was only maybe a week in the gym before I went hardcore and decided me and Dorian Yates are the same person and I will only train to absolute maximal failure. And that obviously led to a lot of pitfalls that I thought I wasn't doing. You know, if you asked me back then what's the training like, I would have said I'm a top training athlete. But with the way me and Rory trained, it was a wee bit idiotic at times. Like if I look back at it now, there's a lot of pitfalls, but if I look at what I gained out of it mentally and the enjoyment that I got out of the training was never out of what pump I achieved or how much weight I pushed. It was the fact that I was destroyed after it and I felt like I'd achieved something through that. Obviously knowing now I was never recovered, but you know, like for instance, Rory got injured at one point, hurt his elbow. I wasn't injured, but he wanted to now do 4 sessions a week, legs only. And what did I do? 4 sessions a week, legs only. Absolutely no issues, upper body, 6 months training, legs got massive, but everything else got small.
That's why you've got big legs now.
Yeah, still trying to catch up the balance.
No, but overall, that experience for you was definitely a net positive because you learned how to do something that a lot of people actually really struggle with at the start. You learned how to train hard first, and then you learned how to train smart later. And that
form came way later. You should see the videos. Some of the form videos, yeah, I'm pushing balls to the walls, maximum reps. I'm destroyed, falling off the kit. You look at the reps, the range of motion, horrendous.
And you see that a lot on TikTok now, and there's a bit of a debate. A lot of people are focusing on training too smart, and they're just not training hard enough.
Yeah.
With all this literature that's coming out and all these trends that are coming out, people are more concerned about how smart they're training compared to how hard. But it links back to, you know, set your destination and put your foot on the gas. You can put your foot on the gas and go in absolutely no direction, and you will not get towards your goals. You can have the best map out there about how you're going to get to, you know, A, B, or C, whatever it is. But if you don't put your foot on the gas, you're never going to leave the station. You're never going to get there. So I think you learned how to put your foot on the gas first and train hard. And then you kind of zoned into where you want to go with that. And like, then you sort of created your map on where you want to go.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good way to go about things, even if it was accidental, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I was forced into it, I would like to say.
No choice.
Yeah, no choice. I mean, you want to train together. Okay, we're doing this. But like you were saying with the back off top set stuff, like I got introduced to that as well. So when me and my mate realized, oh, this Dorian Yates style of training doesn't really work for us because we're doing 2 sets, but we have to add more sets because it's just, there's not enough.
Not enough.
Yeah. Like after doing 2 sets of biceps, I feel nothing. Even though I pushed really hard, didn't feel it. Yeah. So then Trained by JP comes along and we then subscribe to that.
Rocks the boat.
Yeah. And it's top set, back off. Really good.
So I'll dive into my first question for you. And this is going to be surrounding a trend that I've seen on mainly TikTok, but across social medias. It's going to be about people setting goals and getting towards the end of 2023, looking at the goals they'd set and being okay with themselves that they actually hadn't reached some of their goals because they didn't want to, maybe quote unquote, put too much pressure on themselves. Now, how do you deal with pressure? Do you use pressure? Do you put it on yourself? Do you put it on clients in order to try and get the most out of your phases? Or do you maybe strip back, depending on who you're working with and stuff, with the pressure that you're putting on it? Is it person dependent? And how would you use that to your advantage?
So I think with that trend, I think there's a lot to be gained from assessing. Obviously, everyone loves to celebrate the goals they have achieved, but no one really talks about the goals they didn't achieve or the goals they set that just now don't exist because they didn't say anything about them. But I think acknowledging those failures, like not only in your training or in the goals that you've set financially, business-wise, or in your physique, and acknowledging that you didn't reach those goals is the best way that you're going to then achieve those goals. By, okay, right, I set a goal that was too big. I need to strip that back. You know, anytime you hear about goal setting, people say, oh, set a big goal and then divide that by 12 and figure out the 12 small goals that need to be achieved month to month to get there. You know, if you want to add 20 kilos to your bench press, you should be trying to bench an extra 2 kilos every, 2-3 weeks. But with like goal setting in general, and acknowledging those failures, there's just a lot to be gained from, acknowledging the failure. But
yeah,
what was the other bit that you'd asked?
Using pressure. Yeah. So do you tend to put a lot of pressure on yourself or maybe not so much pressure? Like, how would you use that to your advantage? Do you view that as a bit of like a privilege having the pressure there, or are you a little bit more relaxed?
So, I wouldn't say the pressure is huge to progress. I don't think there's a huge audience of fans waiting to see did Leon make weight this week. But I think pressure, for me personally, and for those who know me like close, they'd realize that a lot of the things I deal with are all internal. I'm not as communicative as I probably should be with those things, but I kind of compartmentalize things, break them down, and then I use that as my fuel. So,
okay.
If I am not making the progress I'm meant to be, I feel like I'm creating that internal pressure that, I want to be at X location by X date, and that's the pressure I need to use. And I kind of adopt that with my coaching as well. So, initially when I'm speaking to someone about their goals, I like to get a good, not just, oh, what's your goals for 2024?
Yeah.
Well, how much weight do you want to gain this year? That doesn't matter. It's like, oh, you don't feel confident when you take your top off. Right. Well, that's fuel, right?
Yeah, so that underlying pain point. Yeah.
So when we're like 3-4 weeks in, and that initial motivation has dropped off, and then I say to you, oh, this week you had 3 McDonald's and, you did 2 training sessions, but you said you're so busy, but, I look at your steps and it's 2,000 steps a day, but you said you're out all week. Okay, right. Well, summer's around the corner. Soon you'll be taking that top off and you're going to be in the same position you were last year.
Yeah.
Do you want to be there? Some people don't have that internal pressure, and that's like, as a coach, I think it's great that if I get to know them better, I can add that internal pressure that I would be thinking.
Yeah.
Personally, obviously that's a very negative one, but there is positives you can pull from it too. But I think most people get so much more out of negativity. Like, if I say, oh, Keaton, you're doing everything so great, what are you gaining out of that?
Yeah.
Nothing. Yeah, okay, I feel great. Ego's inflating. But if I say, Keaton, look, that range of motion was terrible. You're not making any progress. You gained 2 kilos last week. What? That's going to be way more fuel for the fire.
Yeah, and it's not so much what you say as well. It's more so how you say it. So if you say to me, look, range of motion wasn't great there, whatever it might be. My range of motion is always spot on, man. So whatever it is, if you say your range of motion is not great, I'll know that you are saying, look, Keaton, there's actually an opportunity for here. Like, there's actually an opportunity here for you to get better. You're not saying, look, your range of motion sucks. What are you doing? Like, let's not fix it. You're saying, look, you can actually get more out of what you're trying to achieve here, and you can actually make more progress. Yes, your range of motion or something, it could literally be anything, isn't up to scratch right now. But what are we going to do in order to make it up there, like get it up to scratch, and then how are we going to then progress from there? So I think it's, again, not so much like exactly what you say, how you say it as well. But I'd completely agree in terms of like spanning things out with goal setting and whatnot, like we were talking about. A lot of people will say to me, look, I want to lose 2 kilos this month, or I want to lose 10 kilos in your 16-week package, whatever it might be. And I'll say, right, let's just stop looking so far in advance and actually just focus on day by day. What day is it today? Monday. What's your goals for Monday? How many steps you need to hit? What food you need to eat? Are you training? Are you not training? And just strip it down and literally take it day by day. If you can string together 7 successful days, you're going to have a successful week. If you can string together 4 of those weeks, you're going to have a successful month. So strip it down and don't get too ahead of yourself sometimes. Yes, there might be pressure on you to be in a certain shape for summer, wedding, holiday, whatever that big event is where you want to look your best. But strip it right back down and break it into how many days have you got? How many opportunities do you have to progress across those days? And you'll get much, much closer to that goal. I think a lot of people will get lost and think, right, okay, well, I want to look good in 6 months. And really, realistically, they won't put their foot on the gas until they're 3 months out, because 3 months is still a long time. But if they were just focusing on day by day, from day 1 through the 6 months, they would be absolutely flying compared to where they are now.
Well, one thing I was going to say just on this topic, right? So obviously, pressure, goal setting, and just maybe this space in general, like what we do. We both train, we both take it quite seriously. Maybe we're not as big as most people would think we should be, but there's a lot of things that go on today that you have to be busy. You have to be flat out 24/7. If you wake up at 7 a.m., I wake up at 5. You only train at 1, I train at 9. You only have 1 meal in, I've had 4.
Yeah.
So what do you think about like the fact that people think or have this perception that you have to be 100% gas to the floor, pedal to the metal all the time with how you do things, and how that's not really realistic and not really going to achieve you goals unless you're an absolute warrior, which most people aren't?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people would probably achieve burnout pretty quick, and probably a lot quicker than what they would imagine if they were doing all these things. And like you said, that links back into the whole goal setting thing. Like, you don't need to be working this like 25/8 sort of like, oh, I work all the time, I never stop, I never miss a beat. So I would actually argue that it's probably quite important to have some form of flexibility in there. Like, if I was just on it 24/7, up at 5 a.m, Monday to Sunday, always doing my work, always prepping my meals, I'd get a couple months in and I think this is boring. And
you'd be a pain to be around.
Yeah, and I would not be a nice guy to be around, exactly. And you can link that into what people are doing dieting phases and things like that.
With you, didn't you? I'm near certain that you've said before that you're not this cut, obviously, not the last one, maybe the one before, that you had so much on your plate that you were becoming like a grumpy individual to be around.
Yeah. It was when I was finishing uni. So I was trying to get my dissertation submitted. I was trying to take coaching off the ground. I didn't want to go and get a grad job. That's not something that I wanted to do. And, finishing uni, your SAS payments stop coming in. You think this is the end of the world. I'm going to need to go get a job. And from being self-employed, it's a lot more stressful, I would argue, for literally just like that income side of things, because if you don't work, you're not getting income. It's not like you know, you can show up to an office job and you're not feeling too great that day. You can put in little work. You're still going to get the same paycheck at the end of the month.
If you do the bare minimum, the paycheck's coming in. If you do the bare minimum with what we do, you know, you're losing clients. You know, you need to have that energy a lot of the time. But, you know, just on the point of like having to be flat out all the time, I think, you know, for what we do, most people would expect it. Oh, he's a coach, he's a PT, you know, he must live like a monk. Yeah. And some people do, and that's absolutely fine. But, you know, I think when you try to apply that to a normal person or say, oh, you didn't eat all your meals today, like, you know, okay. And at the end of the day, they're not going to think that's as big a deal as someone who's trying to step on stage. And that's where the goals just don't align. Some people's goal is just to look better, not to be, you know, I want to be 3% body fat in 12 weeks.
And you can balance too many plates. That's where I went wrong with that period of time. So I was also trying to do all that stuff while dieting. So I didn't have a lot of food there. Didn't have loads of energy there. I was perhaps more grumpy across the day. I say perhaps, I was definitely more grumpy across the day. I didn't have any meal there. I was constantly thinking about food. When am I going to get to eat next, really? While trying to balance, okay, I need to pick business up. I'm self-employed. I don't have any money coming in right now. I've still got payments, like my outgoings were still there. I still have to survive. So yeah, just balancing too many plates. But like you said, that's when coaching comes into it. You need to recognize, me and you might be more into that sort of like bodybuilding style of things. But if we go in and try and apply every single variable that a bodybuilder does to a lifestyle client that just wants to get in a little bit better shape, they're going to look at us like we're crazy, because it's not a normal way to live. Definitely not a normal way to live. So recognizing the differences there and playing to the strengths and weaknesses that comes with, I think.
But one thing everyone needs to know is that if you just did live that lifestyle, like, you probably would make progress just a little bit quicker.
No, would you make more progress with that? Of course you would. Yeah.
If you eat all your meals and never miss them and you did exactly what I said every week, of course you'd make more progress. But obviously that's not the way life goes.
No. Cool. So moving on to next question for you is going to be surrounding you actually balancing things. So this moves in quite nicely, I think. So for anyone that didn't know, Leon has a full-time job as well as coaching. So you're a busy guy. Yeah. You need to balance a lot. So do you have any tips for like time management and how you would manage your time with coaching, with training, with your full-time job? And how do you maybe combat the stress that comes with that?
Yeah. So I think where a lot of people go wrong, and obviously most clients you're going to coach aren't in the position where they can train whenever they want, and I'm not in that position either. You know, my day very much dictates when I'm allowed to train. But I think where a lot of people go wrong is that they look at it as if, okay, I've got so much on my plate, I can't get anything else in this plate. Whereas they're not looking at it as like a puzzle, which is what I look at my week as. Oh, right, so I'm busy 9 till 5. Right, so there's one piece of the puzzle, immovable, can't change that. So where am I going to fit everything else in? I want to train at 9 p.m. All right, I did that last week, but now I can barely sleep. Right, so that didn't fit there. Didn't fit in that puzzle piece last week. Let's move that somewhere else. Maybe I'm not a morning person, but I've never tried. So why don't I start training early instead? And I think for me, with my schedule, it is always having to be quite flexible. You know, I'd love to be able to train at the same time every day, but schedules doesn't allow. So I think for me, it all really just comes down to planning. You know, if I'm told by my coach, you need to get X, Y, Z done this week, I don't go and leave it till like 6 p.m. that day to think, oh, no steps done, didn't do anything. Oh, I had a break at lunch today, but I just sat in instead. You know, if you aren't as privileged and you don't have the time, you are going to have to sit down and think about your week in terms of when the free time is, which is something that a lot of people don't really consider. You know, when someone says to me, oh, I didn't get any steps done today, and it's like, right, well, where do you work? Okay, you work in an office job. Do you get lunch? Yeah. Where'd you go for lunch? At your desk. Why don't you take it to the park? Why don't you walk somewhere? Why don't you think of ways you can creatively get steps in? You know, when you first wake up, what do you do when you first wake up? Oh, I spend 45 minutes in bed scrolling through my feed. You know, that's technically 45 minutes wasted.
Yeah, and I think it's about like looking for those opportunities as well. So a lot of people will just view that as roadblocks. They'll think, well, I've only got half an hour for lunch break and I want to chill out in that half an hour. Or I start work at 9. Right now I'm getting up at 8. I can get to my work just on time for 9. But I think kind of switching that mindset and think, I've actually got opportunities here to get me closer to my goal. So all of a sudden that half an hour lunch break could be 15 minutes having your lunch and maybe 15 minutes walking outside. you'll get about 1,500 steps doing that. And again, maybe instead of thinking, oh, I need to get up earlier, think I can get up earlier. And I'm in a position where I'm able to make more progress with my day just by getting up 45 minutes earlier, go to bed a little bit earlier to balance it out so you don't feel as bad. But again, trying to flip that mindset and look at those gaps of time as opportunities and not view them as this massive burden that you have on your life that you need to get to in order to achieve your goals.
It's exactly that. And I think a lot of people, when they think of, like, everyone has goals, everyone wants to achieve things, but like they don't like the idea that, oh, it's not that easy, you know? Oh, like, yeah, I work a full-time job, and of course they work hard in their job, and they've got family and they've got social needs and they've got to do things that make them happy. But week on week, you're not doing that one thing in the back of your head that you wanted to do. And you're never going to get it unless you realize that, okay, this summer, I'd probably use a different analogy than shredded, right? Let's say you want to get bigger, 6 months time, I want to be bigger. That person that is bigger in 6 months time, you have to be that person now.
Yeah.
The only way you're going to make that progress over these next 6 months isn't if you wait until 6 months to see if it happened.
Yeah.
You have to start being that person now. And that's only going to come about if you sit down, think, right, okay, maybe I can't chill for my lunch break. It's going to take a wee sacrifice. And it's not meant to be easy. Unless you are in a privileged position, you've got all the time in the world. Obviously that comes with its own problems, but then you do have the time, you've no excuse. Yeah. I think some people who have all excuses under the sun and every right to those excuses with their schedule, it's a case of like, okay, right, so you've got all these excuses. Do you want to be a victim about it all? Or do you want to add more to your plate that you didn't think you could fit in? Maybe you don't. Great. Then your goal's not achievable, or at least in the time frame that you thought it was going to be achievable. And unless you make some sacrifices to your own schedule, it's just not going to happen.
And a lot of people will like to glamorize the aspect of hard work. A lot of people in their head will think, I'm going to put in all this hard work and I'm going to be amazing and I'm going to be great. But then when it comes down to actually doing the hard work, they realize this is actually hard. Yeah. They don't actually realize. And all of a sudden, the glamorification of that is just not there.
But I've had that shock. I mean, the first cut I ever did, the bulking for me has always been easy. First cut I ever did, I was like, oh, like me going down low food, that's fine. Who cares? Some days I don't eat, but then when it comes down to it and I'm training and I'm doing all this activity, I'm doing all these steps, doing all this cardio, and I'm putting all this pressure on myself to achieve things. And then it gets down to it and I'm like, I wake up and I'm destroyed from the week. And it's like, step goal today is 12,000 steps. And I just want to sit here. And it's a case of, right, well, do you want to sit here and not do it, or do you want to achieve it? And then it's like, obviously the further you go on with things, the thing that everyone forgets is that motivation comes and goes. Yeah. And they think that you can only do things when motivation's there. No, that's just when it's easier to do things.
Yeah.
So it's the days that you have to rely on your own self-discipline that you get shit done.
That's when a little David Goggins voice comes into your head and you start hearing that. Who's going to carry?
Yeah. Who's going to carry the boats, man?
So moving in to next question. It's a little bit off topic. It's not as fluid as the last one. Obviously we're kind of in this like day and age almost where information is in abundance. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Then you've got platforms, you've got things like forums and websites and whatnot that you can pay to for even more information. Do you think that side of things is having a net negative or a net positive on people that are wanting to get into fitness, bodybuilding, whatever it might be?
To be honest, like this is my bread and butter. I love the science behind things. I love learning about as many things as possible, but I mean, there's that lovely saying, analysis. What was it?
Paralysis by analysis. Yeah.
So, you could look up any training method and you're going to search up what's the best training method to grow my calves. 100 things are going to come up, all of them backed by studies, all of them backed by science. What do you do now?
Just ask you. You've got huge calves.
Just ask someone.
For anyone that can't see, Leon's calves are gigantic.
And when you ask someone who's got big calves what they do for calves, they don't train calves.
Yeah.
It just happened. But I mean, with the whole thing, I think it's a net positive because, like, if I had access to the reams of information that are just coming out now, I feel like I would have made more progress in the beginning. But maybe that's just me. Like, some people would look at all that and just get confused. And maybe I probably would have got confused as well because I didn't really understand a lot of the things. And I do think that there is some benefits to being a wee meathead at times and just going into the gym and having a good time and getting that enjoyment. Because if you go in there with this scientific mindset, okay, so there's 5 sets, 8 reps, 8 to 12 reps. I got 12 reps last week. Today I only got 11. And then you get a wee bit depressed about it. Whereas if you're a meathead, it's going to be like, oh, I got 12 reps last week. I'm getting 13 today.
No matter what.
Yeah, no matter what. Maybe the reps aren't as good, but you had you enjoyed that session. You came away with it with something, as opposed to, oh, the form was a little bit off in the last rep there, and who cares?
And I think it's how you interpret the data. And I actually really think this is where a coach comes in. And I'm not trying to plug here and be like, come to us, get a coach. It's definitely how you interpret the data. So like, look at it and think, okay, well, this person's doing this and it works for him. Could I actually apply that to my training? Could I actually apply it to my lifestyle? Am I actually going to enjoy it? And is that going to work for me? And a lot of the time people don't know that, because people just see the information and think, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And it's that kind of shiny object syndrome. Like, you're always kind of following those trends, and therefore you never really stick to anything. I think it can be really beneficial, and it doesn't have to be a coach. It can be a friend, someone you look up to come in and say, look, you're chopping and changing all the time. This is what we're doing. We're going to stick to it. We're going to make sure that you enjoy it, and you're going to rinse it for a long period of time, and you're going to make a hell of a lot more progress than what you would just following all these trends and all these TikTok videos.
And everything you're doing is optimal throughout the entire year, because you're following all these optimal plans, but you're not giving any of them the time of day to actually reap the rewards.
And I think it's really important as well to highlight, like, these bigger sort of influencers, if you want to say that, on social media. A lot of the time they've blown up on social media because of how they look, and a lot of the time that is down to their genetics, right? Someone could follow a training.
We would say that though, wouldn't we?
Yeah, of course. That guy's bigger than me because it's genetics.
Yeah, it's just genetics,
not,
bro.
not because how hard he works.
But then, of course, when a new client comes on board, no, you can achieve that.
Yeah. But I think it's really, really important to like highlight that you could see someone doing something that's not that great, and because they're maybe blessed with better genetics than you, you're going to automatically assume that works.
Yeah.
And you might be taking a flawed approach.
How many exercises have you done that you just know you're wasting your time?
Yeah.
Like, I've done so many exercises in the beginning. I mean, the first ever workout program I followed was Arnold's one.
Yeah.
Right? And I got nothing out of that.
Yeah.
Nothing. I mean, I was doing pec flies with the dumbbells, only felt it at the bottom. As soon as it came up to the top, nothing, and then just felt like my shoulders were getting wrecked every day. And then just the insane amount of volume of things, just nothing was adding up. Nothing.
Well, I actually bought an app, and now that I look back at it, like, this is exactly what we're talking about. I bought an app, and it was a bunch of influencers on there that all had their own individual plans. And I thought, great, I'll subscribe to this app and I'll just try each one until I find what one works for me. And then it clicked. Like, these guys all look great, and they're all going to look great pretty much no matter what they do. So like, me trying to go and follow one of their plans that they've probably just strung together quite quickly to sell for 20 or 30 quid on this app, it's probably not the best way to go about things.
Even if it is their plan, like genuinely the plan they're following week to week, most plans for people who are trying to bring up weaknesses or develop their body is tailored to their body,
Yeah.
Okay, maybe this guy trains legs once a week, but you've got tiny legs. Maybe you need to train legs twice a week.
Yeah.
You follow in this guy who's already got big legs. That isn't the split that really built him. And the split alone never built him. It's all the basics that went into it.
Yeah.
Like, how many influencers do you see doing the most wank exercises, and they're doing, see, when you do shoulder press, do it like this, and their shoulders are like the biggest delts you've ever seen.
Yeah.
But for a fact, if you gave that exercise to everyone on earth, they're going to make zero progress. In fact, they're just going to get hurt.
Yeah. And it comes back down to, I know we're chatting about this actually in the car on the way over, but it's what you do outside the gym. Like, it's your nutrition, it's your recovery, it's everything like that. Like, training, programming stuff, it is super important. I think it's actually overlooked in terms of how important it is. However, if you go in and you train hard enough, you don't need to have this super optimal split. As long as you're eating well, recovering well, you're still going to see some progress. Now, the more advanced you get, the less that progress is going to be. Yeah. The more advanced you get, the more you're going to have to look at your training splits and the optimality and things like that, just because there's less progress there to be taken. But definitely, for a good chunk of your like lifting or training career, whatever you're doing, there's loads and loads of progress to be made just by focusing on the basics, like you said, like your sleep, your nutrition, things like that, the stuff that's not super exciting. You never hear someone going, I'm absolutely buzzing to try and beat my sleep score tonight.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. No one's like, I can't wait to get 8.5 hours compared to
No, I
8
can't
hours
wait
and
to press the
15 minutes.
man. That's what
Yeah,
it is.
that's what it's the exciting stuff.
But they don't look at all the things that go into eventually hitting a goal like that. You know,
Yeah.
when you meet someone in the gym after you've just done your top set and done your biggest lift, and they go, "Oh man, how long did it take you to press X weight?" I couldn't put a number on it.
Yeah.
Maybe when I started taking things seriously, I was sort of destined to eventually hit some decent numbers.
Yeah.
But do you think on that, this is something that I was just thinking about there, like with the whole progress thing and people wanting to follow the best training program and then they get disheartened, right? So they have just followed their favorite influencer's program. They've just realized it's not the training plan that made them big, it's gear.
Yeah.
What do you think about how many people now? I know so many young guys who've been training 6 weeks and they're hopping on now.
Yeah. I think it's super important to point out, like if you have a client on board or maybe you have a friend, right, that's just getting into things and you want to make some progress, whatever, I think it's super important to actually point out just how long things take. And I know that's a little bit off topic with the PEDs. We can get into that in after this, but you need to sit and point out, like, okay, you want to look like this guy. Realistically, how long has this guy been training for? 20 years? 10, 15, 20 years? How long have you been training for? 3 days? Right, okay. Well, it's going to be a long journey. It's going to be a long road.
Are you ready to make some lifelong lasting decisions based on something that you've only been doing 3 days? Like, what if next week you don't like this anymore, but now you're full of gear and you're wondering why your nipples are hurting, man? You know?
Yeah, it's definitely, I'd actually probably like to do a podcast just on that subject matter, like just going into that. And we can dive into that a little bit more. But I definitely think it's important to highlight just how long things take, because a lot of people think, you know, you see it with social media, people pushing like 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks. And don't get me wrong, like I'll push that to get people's foot in the door. Like it's a good way to get your foot in the door, test the waters, see how things are. But a lot of people think, okay, this guy's doing a 12-week package or this guy's doing a 16-week package. That means at the end of the 16 weeks, I'm going to be able to look like him or I'm going to be able to look like the guy I want to look like. But that's just getting your foot in the door. Like that
in reality, though, like the reason a lot of people don't really think about why they are that length. If I made a 2-week program and got everyone to sign up for it and paid me 50 quid each to sign up for the first 2 weeks, and then I post the transformations for the 2 weeks, it'll be the worst transformations you've ever seen because it takes time. It just takes time. The longer the plan and the more serious you are, the better that result's going to be.
Yeah.
In 16 weeks, are you going to be as big as your favorite influencer? Absolutely not. Even if you took everything under the sun, it's not going to happen.
But can you make great progress in 16 weeks?
Absolutely.
Of course. But it's just understanding what great progress is in that length of time. Great progress in 16 weeks is way different to great progress over years. Like that's extremely obvious to point out. But
especially if it's a gaining phase.
Yeah.
Like if I posted a 16-week gaining phase progress pic, you know, people are going to look at that and go, what? That looks terrible. You know, he looks fat. Yeah. But in reality, you haven't seen all the progressions I've made, all the training progressions I've made, the fact that this side of my delt's bigger this year than last year, you know? And
then you reveal it through the fat loss phase. And then that's when everyone's like, oh my God, this guy looks so different. But it wasn't the fat loss phase that changed you. Yeah. It was the gaining phase that changed you. And it was the fat loss phase that revealed things. Yeah. So yeah, being understanding about that. Do you want to dive into some pet peeves?
Sure.
That's something we were going to cover on here.
Well, just seeing as we were talking about gear.
Yeah.
There's a lovely saying that I love to hear, and it's all the gear and no idea.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know what you think about that. Like, see, for me, I know a lot of people hop on like a cycle, done no research, not even following a consistent training plan. They're eating, you know, was it brioche buns and chicken dippers for dinner, man, and they're making no progress, right?
Yeah.
That just it boggles me, right?
Yeah.
That you have made zero effort to try achieve anything with the basics and just went, you know what? I need a cycle.
Well, we could link that back into the information abundance that we have online, socials. You'll see a lot of people like hyping that up and, you know, really sort of glamorizing that aspect of things and not realizing the impact that they maybe have on like the younger generation on social media. All it takes is some 17, 18-year-old that's only been training for a couple of weeks to think, well, this is my idol. He's saying that he takes all this stuff and it's okay for him and he doesn't have any side effects. I'm going to do the exact same thing. Yeah. And I think that's part of the problem. But you can link that to even like all the gear and no idea with like training equipment and stuff.
Yeah.
See if someone comes on board or someone starts training and in the first couple of weeks they've got cuffs and daisy chains,
SBD,
everything.
head to toe.
I'm thinking you don't even know like how to perform things correctly with your form.
Yeah.
Never mind putting cuffs and all that on you.
Sure. Only last week we were doing push in Future, and there's a guy there with a slingshot around his arms, benching 3 plates when he's just bouncing it off the chest, flying it up, and I bet you he thinks making significant progress. I just went up 5 reps from this slingshot. When take that off, right? 5 reps down.
But how would you approach that? So that's quite interesting. Would you go up and offer some advice to him and try to help him out? Because that's definitely something you can't just look at and go, well, this guy's a beginner. What is he doing?
It's so easy to put someone down just based on what they're doing.
You need to,
but it's hard to broach because, you know, if someone came up to me in my first 6 months of training and said to me, Leon, that was a woeful set, I'd tell you, shut up.
Yeah.
That was great. See, my legs are bigger than yours.
Yeah.
You know? And that's what it always boils down to. I'm bigger than you.
Yeah.
So how could I possibly be doing something wrong? But I think if I thought that they were going to be able to receive that well, and if I could get it across in a way that's like beneficial to them, like if I went over to that guy and said, oh, like I'd probably ask them why using the slingshot. That's when you find out a bit more. Oh, I'm a powerlifter, or I want to do an assisted top set for myself. Maybe that's their goal.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm just looking at purely from progression.
Yeah.
You know, when I see someone doing kettlebell swings in the gym, all I want to say to them is like, that's not growing your shoulders, you know, but maybe they were just in here to get a fun workout.
Yeah.
And that's just different.
Yeah, exactly. And again,
Still
that links back to how you say it and not necessarily what you say, finding out what their goals are and trying to connect with them.
Like the first thing I'd be asking them is, what are you trying to achieve?
Yeah.
As much as I want to say, take that slingshot off now.
So I think one of my pet peeves would definitely be people drinking protein shakes or having monsters or pre-workout like during their session, and more specifically towards the end of the session, to the point where they don't even finish the can of monster or whatever and they're heading out the door. Like, yeah, people might not be educated on it and things like that, but it doesn't really take too much effort to find out when to have caffeine, when it's going to hit you, how long it's going to take to actually get in your system and things like that. And again, part of me wants to go up to them in the gym and say, oh, do you know that that's actually going to take like 40 minutes to hit you and you're having it now, so it's going to be hitting you when you're walking out the door.
And that's definitely going to get them on board.
The guy's going to be like, do you know what, mate? I don't really care. Like, I just have the monster because it tastes good and it's a bit of a placebo effects. Yeah, like I'm having this during my session. I'm telling myself I'm going to have more energy. And to be fair, the placebo effect might be quite strong and he might actually get some net positive from that. But at the end of the day, I still want to go up and say, look, mate, you should probably have that 30, 40 minutes before you come into your session. As
soon as they finish the last exercise, it's like, oh, you feeling that caffeine buzz now?
Yeah, exactly. They're going to be buzzing walking out the door when they should have been buzzing in their session. They're just not timing it correctly. But yeah, more education on that side of things.
Another one, which we both experienced quite a lot, is excessive grunting.
Yeah.
I cannot handle it, right? I grunt during sessions. You do too.
Yeah.
But it's not the same, right? I've seen people grunt, dumbbell press in the 20s, and they're screaming so loud that everyone in the gym is looking. When I grunt, I'm trying to brace. Yeah. I'm trying to breathe under load. You under load of 20 kilos screaming is just embarrassing. I'm
purposely trying not to grunt. I don't really have an option. Like when I'm bracing and I'm under that load, it just comes out.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking I'm gonna grunt here so everyone hears me shifting this load or whatever it is. And if I see someone lifting heavy weight and they're grunting, does not bother me at all.
But is that a wee bit bad? Maybe you're judging people because they can't lift as much.
No, it's the grunting like before the set for me. It's like grunting from like
they're
before
about to
the
hop
set.
In the exercise and they're starting to grunt.
Yeah, and they're starting to shout and from rep 1.
Unless you're bloody Ronnie Coleman and your thighs are 40 inches wide.
Yeah, unless you're maybe only going for like 4 or 5 reps and there may be a wee grunt from the start. But if you're going like 15 reps and you grunt as you lift the dumbbells up in the first 5 absolutely fly up.
Yeah, grunting each one even though they're easy.
Yeah,
like on your warm-up set.
That's when it's a little bit of a pet peeve for me. Yeah, the warm-up set, they're just practicing their grunts for when they're getting into their top set.
For the big grunts.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's the same, do you not think like that grunting probably leads into like when people are, maybe you're training with someone or some guy comes over to give you a spot and he's like, 5 more when you've done like 10 and the last rep was so slow, you're about to rack it down and he's just 5 more.
Yeah.
Easy, bro. Easy, bro. And then you put it down and he goes, oh, what? You had way more than that. Yeah, okay.
Nothing more
Dead on,
infuriating when you're shaking like a dog.
Yeah.
You try to get that last rep.
Even on that, there's a pet peeve.
And then 3 or 4 more.
Yeah.
It's not happening, man. And you know it's not happening.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no way that I'm moving an R3 when you're already helping me move this one.
Okay, so
No
we'll just do
chance.
another 3 assisted reps where you pull it up for me. That's
Yeah.
great. I'll just do the negatives. But on that, right, what about, this one is really annoying for me, right, is super ultra motivational people.
Like David Goggins?
No. Love him, right?
Yeah.
He's achieved things. He's got
Yeah.
a right to be like that.
Yeah.
It's when you see some, just your local dude who you know for a fact just had a big Domino's last night, and he's saying on a story in the morning, you cannot be eating off plan after last night, posting a wee story of the Domino's.
Yeah.
Screaming at the camera in the morning like you're just not doing what you need to do.
When it's not warranted.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of get that as well, I think a little bit. I think if someone's achieved great things, then it's really easy to like lock into that and think, okay, well, this guy's obviously done it. He's put in the graft, he's put in the work.
Yeah.
But
there's insights to be gained. Whereas when you hear someone who's ultra motivational and they haven't achieved anything, they're just regurgitating something that someone else has said.
Someone, exactly what someone else has said.
And they're not really applying it to themselves at all. Like,
yeah.
How many times have you told someone some good advice that you don't follow yourself?
Well, that's the key thing. It's leading from the front, isn't it?
Yeah.
So for us to be coaches, we need to set an example. We need to say, look, this is how we operate. And I'm leading from the front because we've got a team behind us. We want people to succeed as well. But when you see someone being extremely motivational and they're maybe not leading from the front, then perhaps tells you more about that person. And, if they've actually got the best intentions behind it, are they trying to really help that person and get the most out of that person? Or are they trying to make themselves look good on social medias because they work really hard? What is the actual reason behind the motivation?
Is there anything that you do that where, do as I say, not as I do?
Sometimes I'll be a bit cheeky and have caffeine a little bit later than 2 or 3, depending on how long a day I've had. But I'll say to my clients, you want to cut that off. But I'm not super strict with that with my clients. I know sometimes I'll say, look, 3:30, 4 o'clock. If you are really, really feeling it today and your session's going to be crap, and having that wee hit of caffeine is going to be the flipping the switch to go and have a good session, by all means, I'd be happy for you to do that.
There's 2 things that I do, and I think you do them as well, that I think a lot of meatheads do, right? And obviously from a coaching perspective, I know for a fact it's wrong, right? But sometimes I'll know the lift's not there and I'll do it anyway. I know for a fact I'm not getting in the rep range, but I will not regress the weight. Not a hope in hell am I lowering it from the heaviest weight I've ever done to anything lower than that. Even if the reps are going to be horrendous, I'm doing it anyway. I
think there's a tipping point there though, isn't there? Because
eventually
maybe if you do it for, so you're not saying that you're always going to stick on that weight.
Because I would be dead, man.
If it's been a week or 2 and you're like, you know what, I've tried it, it's really not moving.
But then I'll just change the exercise out of spite. Dumbbell press isn't really working the past few weeks. I'm changing it out.
But what does that tell you about your character though?
Ego.
That you're not ready to give up. Ego. And you're not wanting to give up. So you need to look for the positives there as well. If someone, I would actually maybe argue like, I've seen some people looking for like almost like too perfect of a form.
Yeah.
Maybe their eccentrics go from 4 seconds to 3 seconds and they're like, nah, I need to strip the load back off and need to make sure those eccentrics are the same. Make sure your form's good enough. Make sure your form is as good as it can be.
Yeah.
But you don't need to be doing anything
like
crazy.
Not when you're hyper-analyzing. I see people timing their rest times and that boggles me sometimes because I just do it when I want to go back in.
Yeah.
When I feel fresh, the heart rates came down, I can tell I'm good to go. But if I was timing it 60 seconds, I feel like the end of 60 seconds, I'd be like, well, I need another 60 seconds. Man.
Yeah, it depends what exercise and stuff it is as well. Like, you say that to people, just go when you're ready so that you can get the most out of the set.
Yeah.
If you're timing 45 seconds and you're absolutely gubbed after set 1 and you're thinking, I'm going to hit an RPR here in set 2, absolutely no way. Like, take the time that you need. Then it's about finding that balance. Don't go and take 10 minutes because you're going to hit a PB
Unless you're a powerlifter,
on set 2.
You need your Haribos.
Yeah, maybe.
Another thing with that though is like, see when just in the same thing, I will be injured or I feel something's off, sore, not leaving, not changing the exercise, doing it anyway. I might get hurt more, but I'll do it anyway. And it's just like, that's another meathead attribute that I have. And I'll have a conversation with my coach. Oh, I was doing RDLs yesterday. My back's really sore. I've got pull today. What should I do? And he obviously replies back, well, think you should maybe like take out all exercises where you're going to load your back. So the whole session. Okay. I'm going to go anyway, but I'll let you know. And he just says to me, yeah, I would have done the same.
Yeah. I'm getting a little bit better with that, I would say, over time, recognizing like I feel a bit of a niggle. I'll push it to see what's there. And then if it's not there, I've got a little bit better at pulling back.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time I'll still try and full send it.
It's only when the anxiety gets really high and I'm worried, like if it's something that I feel like it's just going to tear off, I won't do it.
We're not stupid with it, of course.
I'm not ridiculous, but if I think there's a hope that I could do the session, just match it. I feel like I'll still do it. Yeah. Like my coach, for instance, shout out to him again, but he has an issue with his glute, right? Where he should probably not be hip hinging as much as he does. Do you think he's changed his split? No. Why? Because that's where all the fun movements are, man.
Yeah.
How fun is it to lift the biggest weight on your back, do a big heavy ass squat? Maybe in 6 weeks' time, the glute's going to be playing up again, but for 6 weeks, you were able to drive it. And I can relate to that.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely relate to that as well. I'll go with my last pet peeve, and then we can maybe round it off with some goals after that. Maybe rustle a few feathers here with like really the big bodybuilders, but eating out of Tupperware when you don't need to. Like, I feel like it's almost like a flex nowadays to put it on your story and be like,
the nicest Tupperware.
Yeah, look how prepped I am. I'm prepping my Cocoa Pops post-workout to have them on the car home, when realistically you could probably wait and have your Cocoa Pops when you get in the house. You ever been in a car that's had Cocoa Pops sitting underneath the seat? Nah.
Stinks, man.
Yeah.
Stinks.
But I think it's just like an unnecessary, again, that sort of work. Well, I work 25/8, man, and I never take any days off. I think it comes into that flex.
I eat my post-workout 5 minutes after the session. Yeah,
it definitely comes into that culture of I'm outworking you and I'm prepping all this when it's maybe unnecessary. And I don't know why the Tupperware gets under my skin, but it does, because sometimes it's not necessary. Like if you're going on a big long road trip or whatever, you're prepping your meals, fair enough, go for it. But if you're driving home from the gym, you got your Cocoa Pops sitting there when realistically you could have them when you're home. I don't know what it is, but
I think this is something where you're probably a wee bit different to most, because you know when you post things, you don't really talk about food that much. You don't really show what you eat day to day. Obviously, you've done it before, but it's never like a focus. Whereas, like, I think some coaches take a lot of pride, or even just not just coaches, but people who train and care about what they do and document it. They take a lot of pride in, I'm eating way cleaner than you. I'm eating way better than you. When at the end of the day, you know, if I'm eating the calories and the macros set, I'm still making the same progress as you.
Yeah.
Maybe your food is clean as hell and you enjoy that. Like there's a coach I follow and he eats like bagels that aren't even toasted.
Yeah.
No jam, no nothing, not even cut, right?
Yeah.
With like 6 boiled eggs. And he'll put that in the story. And he knows for a fact when he puts that in the story, people are going to go, what the fuck is that? That is like the most dole meal ever. You see the way he has chicken too, white, roasted in the oven, no seasoning, just a chicken breast. And that's hardcore, sure, but like, you know, that's disgusting.
I don't really post my food too much because it's pretty boring, to be honest. Like it doesn't look great. So like I'm really not too bothered about presentation and stuff. I'll pretty much just throw anything on the plate. And when I do that, it doesn't look great. Like I've tried to take some photos and stuff like that before, and I can maybe put a little bit more effort into it. It's not something that I'm super passionate about, sharing all my meals. Make sure that my clients are eating well, make sure they're eating good, and I care more about their meals, of course. But a lot of the time I look at my plate and I think, is that actually worthy to go on social media?
Funny you say that, because my girlfriend's page is very aesthetic and she cares about the way things look. And I'll put up a story of my food, right? I'll just flash on, man. I'm about to gub it. Don't care about the angle. Steam is rising off it. There's dust on my table. The fork is all dirty, man. And I've already ate a scoop of it. And she'll go, why are you posting that? It's not even nice to look at. And it's like, oh, well, I just want to show people what I'm eating, man.
Yeah. So should we wrap up with some goals?
Yeah.
I think that's probably been long enough, to be fair.
Well, we should probably cover that this podcast would probably aim to do this like monthly.
Yeah. I think once a month to start off, and then maybe twice a month across summer.
Up,
yeah. Once you guys listen and share it with all your friends and things like that, you know, do us a solid. Then we'll maybe go to twice a month, something like that. And then, we'll see where it goes from there. But at least once a month for the time being. We'll cover some topics. Beef. Can't chat. Right at the very end, I stutter. Feel free to fire some questions over to us if you want us to cover any like specific subjects. We can definitely do that. But we'll round off with some goals for the year. So we're going to personal, business, and physique wise. You want to go first?
Yeah. Well, I feel like my personal goals are business and physique.
Yeah.
I don't think I've got like any others, but business wise, obviously I've still got my full-time job, and I'd love this to be the year that I could sack that off and get to a full-time position with coaching.
Yeah.
Get busy enough for that.
Let's hope that no one's listening from your work.
Yeah. I haven't said anything.
Maybe cut that out.
Yeah. I'm looking to sign on a new contract.
Yeah.
But that's definitely a goal. I'm not sure if that's an achievable goal this year, but it's definitely one that I think should always be at my forefront.
Yeah.
And obviously I think with the partnership that we started up together, it's made like my goal setting a lot easier, because I feel like I've always had someone to be accountable to, especially with my physique, because I'm coached. But like I've got a business partner who's I'm accountable to when I post. If I don't post this week, I can be damn certain that you're going to go, what's the crack here?
Where's the post, man? It's Sunday. Where is it?
Yeah. I'm waiting on it.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's a big goal I have. And then as for my physique, I'm aiming to do like a photo shoot at the end of the year. I'll be starting to cut soon, not for that, just to tidy up because I'm a fat wheel. But I'll be doing a photo shoot at the end of the year, and that'll be my first ever like true exposure to getting actually lean. I don't think I've ever got lean before. I've got to seeing a six pack, but never lean. I've never had like striations or anything like that. Yeah. So it'll be really interesting, a good process, I think.
Yeah.
And that's something that I would like to then assess if I think I should compete and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm interested in.
And then set those bigger goals for 2025.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll be super interesting though when you are shredded. See how things are looking. Like I'm excited to see that when you're shredded.
Could be an absolute mess.
Nah, definitely not. Put in too much hard work for that.
Yeah. All the physique updates just be the legs.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, so when it comes to personal, they're pretty small. And by no means is this like New Year's resolutions. This is just like goals for the year. Which you could argue as a New Year's resolution, but I don't really view it like that.
Well, it could take years.
Yeah. Personal ones are pretty simple. I want to try and stop swearing as much. If definitely like who I'm around. If I'm with my friends, it's definitely way more frequent. If I'm with like family members, then it's pretty much non-existent. But I'd like to get it closer to being non-existent across the board. I'd also say reading more. Like I actually really, really enjoy reading, and I don't think I prioritize as much time for it as I should. I can aim for like about 10 pages a day right now. And I'll be completely honest, there's some days where I don't hit that. It's probably looking like 4 or 5 days compared to all 7. So I'd like to start reading more, just because I take more enjoyment from that than what I thought, and definitely more enjoyment compared to like sitting watching Netflix by myself.
Yeah. Which is enjoyable.
It is enjoyable, but
not as enjoyable. 25-8, bro.
Yeah.
Reading a book a day.
Yeah. Do you ever get that? Feel guilty for not working?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
See, if I take like a full day to myself and do nothing, at the end of the day, I actually struggle to sleep because I feel like I haven't achieved anything that day.
Yeah.
Especially if like I'm on, like I take a few days off something and I feel like beat up, immediately I just feel guilty.
Yeah.
It's not, I could spend all day talking about that.
Yeah, same. Maybe for another podcast. Business related, it's obviously with Lift Initiative. I've got some things that I would like to incorporate into that. Client meetups quarterly. So it's not so much like, I want this amount of clients and I want this amount of income. I want to create more of a community aspect to the coaching, especially the online side of things, because I think that's quite hard to replicate compared to what you would get with like a one-to-one PT, that sort of like community, especially if you've got clients all over the place. So having meetups where everyone can actually come be part of the team, meet everyone else that's on the team, have a good laugh at the end of the day, just come in and train with each other. I think having them spread out across the year, every sort of 3 or 4 months would be really, really good. So getting them planned in. Obviously growing the team is one of the goals as well. Like, of course it is, but it's more so looking at like how we're going to get there and how the specific things that I want across the year in order to do that. When it comes to physique, I'm cutting at the moment. So we're about to hit week 5 tomorrow, finishing off week 4. I'm about 5 kilos down or so. So we're probably looking to drop another maybe 7 kilos, something like that. We've got about 10 weeks left, and then we're going to be doing a photo shoot at the end of that. So that is more so physique related. And then moving forward from there, definitely maintaining more of a lean physique year round. Being
push-up stuff, you getting bored of it?
Yeah, especially being natural lifter. Like there's just not as much progress to be taken there every year now. And for me to see really significant changes, I'd probably be looking at like a year, 2 year off season, and looking at and assessing things. I'm definitely way more confident when I am in better shape. I definitely like enjoy life a little bit more when I am in better shape. Holidays, whatnot, like I just feel a lot better in myself, a lot more confident, better mental health when I am in better shape. So for me to go and spend a year or two on an off season to put on not too much muscle is starting to come to the forefront that it's not really what I want to do. So that doesn't mean that I'm not going to spend time trying to push up a little bit and put muscle on, like take maybe like a very, very slow approach to a gaining phase, but there'll be a lot more frequent like maybe tidy ups and diets and stuff in there just to maintain shape year round.
So you'll always look leaner than me. That's what you're saying.
Well, if that was my goal and your goal was
already won.
to bulk, like obviously compete and things like that, then I think it would be stupid if I didn't look lean.
One thing we should probably also mention is that in the build up to summer, we're looking to do a big, like almost get a lot of people to do like a photo shoot together.
Yes.
Which probably be good to start talking about now, get people interested.
Yeah.
As you could all probably shock or believe that we're doing something for summer as a coaching business. Something big's coming.
We are. Something to look out for, guys. This is going to be revolutionary.
We're going to drop a countdown tomorrow, man. 56 days to the drop.
Yeah, so us alongside every other coach out there is going to have a summer package probably.
There'll only be 5 slots.
Yeah.
But there'll also be another 5 when they're taken up.
Yeah, so we're looking to run a 12-week competition where, again, we're looking to... It's going to be more so focused around fat loss. It doesn't have to be fat loss, but it's obviously leading into summer, so most people want to get lean, most people want to get shredded. So again, community aspect there. Everyone that's already on the team as well, it's probably worth noting that you guys can take part in this. It's definitely not just for newcomers, but we're looking to do a big sort of like photo shoot, training day at the end of it as well, so you guys can kind of show off. That will all be taken care of by us, so we will supply photographers and stuff like that. There'll be food. Pre-workout, all that. We will get a gym space, a couple places in mind. And we'll start promoting that probably in the next few weeks, next couple of weeks. Mid-February, March time is when we'll start promoting that. And that's going to kick off April. It'll be April, May, June. Perfect time for all those holidays that you no doubt have planned where you can look your best. And yeah, it'll be fun. That's the main thing. It'll be fun. You'll feel as though you're part of something more rather than just maybe being under me or Leon. You'll be part of something a little bit bigger.
So I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
Good place to wrap it up, yeah. Not too long.
The end of the first episode.
First pod. Yeah. Should we do a if you made it this far?
If you made it this far,
give us a thumbs up.
Yeah. Send us a message.
Send us a message. But yeah, wrap it up there.
Yeah.